We are Borg. Resistance is futile. You will be, Species 8472 is blowing us up. That is not the episode we're talking about tonight. Hi, I'm Louis Brandmeier, and this is Clever Orbits, where we talk about Star Trek in a fun and awesome way, and occasionally other science fiction. I have with me Tyler Brandmeier.
Hey.
And Richard Jones Futrell.
Hello.
Richard is, of course, a relative of Indiana Jones.
That's right. That's exactly correct.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is.
So today we're talking about yet another Borg episode, Collective, from Season 6 of Star Trek Voyager, when the show had matured to a great deal. And in this episode, the Voyager crew encounters... It had aged well, like a decent wine. Voyager encounters a Borg cube. No, Tyler. A Borg cube full of children, basically. Drones who have not fully matured and who yet are inflected by Borg principles and ideas and all of this and think that they are collective, and then how they deal with the Voyager crew is very interesting. And I thought the episode was pretty good. I thought it could have been better. I thought it engaged on a lot of... It did something really great in counterpoint to the last one that we watched, Survival Instinct, where it put 7 of 9 in basically the same situation that she was in when she was separated from the Borg Collective earlier. And we'll get to that, what I mean by that. But, yeah, there was a lot of cool stuff. To start, I would say the Delta Flyer is my favorite shuttlecraft and possibly favorite support craft in general for any of the space ships on Star Trek. Like, it is just gorgeous and angular and colorful and fun. Yeah, so we get to see a shot of that in the very beginning. Then I like their opening. I like that they're just playing their game, and then they look up, and it's like, oh, we're fucked. There's a Borg cube coming.
Or, I'm sure that at this point they realize they're going to come up with some way out of it. They must have caught on by now.
Oh, you think the Voyager crew probably knows that they're impervious to actual harm from the Borg?
they probably noticed at this point that they're invincible.
They're all self-aware that their contracts don't allow them to die or get assimilated.
However, in the episode after the next one, we will see Richard doesn't know. We won't talk about that yet. The Borg still have enough of an impact to rattle the people, which is great. I mean, it's basically, like, oh, there's a Klingon ship off the port bow. We should raise shields, probably. We can probably handle them, but we should raise shields. Like, this is the first episode where I'm feeling some Borg fatigue. Like all the previous episodes that we've watched, they weren't portrayed or proffered, really, in an interesting enough way or at a new enough angle that it was just like, yeah, I want to see what's going on here. What's up with that? That's pretty cool. Now it's tricky, though, because they did have a new angle. They just didn't exploit it properly.
Yeah.
And
Borg kids.
And in lieu of exploiting it properly, what's left is kind of a well-worn trope. It's trite. It's like, okay, well, we're facing off against another contingent of Borg, and we've got to figure out how to manage that. Like, that's not interesting. That's just, you do that every day.
I mean, it would have been, if this was like the first Borg episode in Voyager, it would have been really good. But at this point, the kinds of Borg explorations they're doing, I agree, it's a little bit well-worn. It's kind of like there's this Borg ecosystem in the Delta Quadrant that we talked about, and now we're just sort of going down the laundry list of possible sort of quasi-Borg entities that you might run into. And this one's like the disconnected Borg kids. Like previously, it was about like 3 or 4 Borg that got cut off from the collective. Now it's about 10. Maybe the next episode is going to be about 100, and then the next one's going to be about 1,000.
You're not that far off, but they do a lot of things that are interesting with the disconnected Borg and the way that they're disconnected in the future. Unimatrix Zero is awesome. I almost want to skip Child's Play and have us watch Unimatrix Zero. Probably that's what we'll do at the end of this episode, because it's such a fun two-parter. And they managed to squeeze a little bit of juice out of the Borg that's left, like just a little bit.
I like that juice.
That Borg juice.
Borg look like they produce a lot of juice.
They probably
Resistance
don't.
is tangy.
So, in the interest of being even more humorous, the idea of a propulsion matrix, like when they're first engaging the Borg cube, and Chakotay's like, target the propulsion matrix. I was like, wait, seriously? Like any other ship, they've got one spot that has to do with propulsion? That completely contravenes what we saw in Q-Who, where the stuff was distributed through the Borg ship, and they could regenerate through the bioenergy and whatever of the drones and the distribution of energy through the ship. Like, it was more subtle than that. However, maybe with Seven of Nine's help, by this point in the show, they are not only impervious to let's be honest, they know how to handle themselves with the Borg. They're not impervious, or else there would be no drama to these plots. There would be no way of selling them past the writer's room. And you do get the sense that there is a laundry list of permutations that they are going down. Fine, that's great. However, a unified singular propulsion matrix, maybe Seven of Nine, like Picard, when he's like, hey, everybody fire at that one spot, remember?
Yeah.
In First Contact, yeah. So maybe she knows, and she's passed that along to where tactical sensors on the Flyer and on the Voyager can like distinguish that, and they're like, all right, well, we'll target that thing. So, excuse me, that was good. And then when this is on Deep Space Nine, it's Chief O'Brien. On Voyager, it's Harry, the character who always suffers harm. like the writers never leave an opportunity out to like cause this person pain. And I thought it was hilarious how Harry, he's in the Jeffries tube, and then it blows up, and he went down way too easily. Like, the acting was bad. I mean, that explosion didn't produce the net result. Like the way that he flew away from it was like, what? No. But I mean, it's okay because it's Harry Kim, and I guess that's Harry Kim for you. Just generally badly acted, badly treated. Because remember, in Scorpion, he had the stuff up his nose. He had like this 8472 stuff. So I guess that's a sample size of 2, but I can think of 1 or 2 other episodes where he's like the victim of the horrible thing.
Yeah,
at least 2 other episodes.
So starting at the beginning, I was thinking like these Voyager characters in an episode like this, there's so little that they do that has to do with their actual character. Like in that shuttlecraft, if you just swapped the characters, like swap
for 4 other characters,
would it be any different? Could you just swap out all the characters except Janeway and 7 of 9? And also, how come Neelix knows how to pilot a shuttlecraft? These things must be pretty easy to pilot. He's a cook. Like,
he had his own ship. He used to have his own ship.
Why do these people go through so much training to learn how to control these things?
I mean, the Delta Flyer was designed by Tom Paris, so maybe he had in mind the idea that people other than straight-up Starfleet people would be piloting it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay. It's I have a long-standing theory that actually the ships could run themselves, and Starfleet just lets the people sort of act like they're running the ship so they can feel some sense of purpose.
So that's why they're so unmarked. Every console, they're just shapes.
People they're just glad to be working.
Starfleet is a grand deception, and it starts with Lacars. I thought the idea of an assimilation chamber was interesting. We saw it in Dark Frontier, but it stood out to me in this episode. Like, here's the place where we're going to bring people to assimilate them. And I guess, okay, maybe specialized machinery you keep in that one room for that purpose. But it also seems like the Borg can pretty much assimilate anybody, anywhere, anytime. I mean,
yeah.
So
maybe that's like maybe there's different levels of assimilation, and like when you get assimilated by
12.
the airborne stuff or whatever, you're just sort of half assimilated, and when you need to go all the way, full assimilated, they take you to the chamber.
Well, so it's interesting you bring that up. I always thought it would be more powerful for the Borg to put a virus in the air than actually have to have like nanoprobe to skin contact. And I think we may have discussed this before, like why didn't they do that or whatever. But it's actually brought up in the Voyager relaunch novels after Endgame. I think it's called The Farther Shore, and then Homecoming. Yeah, great novels. 7 of 9 actually happens to accidentally bring a Borg virus back. And people just start getting sick. And then they start turning into Borg. And you're like, oh, my God. So how assimilation happens, I guess, is kind of interesting. I want to know what their standard operating procedures are. Like, all right, first remove eye and replace with, and then must replace arm, and then add armor plating, and then add blinking lights. Must add at least 3 blinking lights.
Blinking lights.
Hey, do you think they give the, like if they were missing an arm, do they give them an arm first?
Probably not.
What's the limb procedure? How does that, where's the limb clause?
I don't know, man. So here's another thing. Here's another thing where Voyager shows itself, like, as being Voyager, like a characteristically kind of worn, thin show. When Voyager first engages the messed up cube in combat, they're exchanging weapons fire, but it ends up being depicted through a conversation with Tuvok and Janeway and B'Elanna, and you're like, can you please show me some weapons fire? This is
and
boring.
It's not a conversation with much passion. It's
like a non-event.
There's a Borg cube there. They're just like having they're sort of like bored and confused. They're just saying stuff.
Even Tuvok, which I'm sure this is in character for him, although he did something out of character later in the episode. He's like, they're targeting our warp core. Shields are holding, sort of reassuringly, but he's just sort of blasé. He's not really in the moment. He's just like, shields are holding. It's okay, guys. We've done this before.
Yeah, especially when he ended up saying their shield generators are too deep inside. Like it was almost like, so you're the tactical officer. You're just like giving up. You're like, we can't do anything else.
Tuvok really wasn't very tenacious there. He was really phoning it in today.
It's like, yeah, I think that whole sequence was phoned in. I felt like, he was just basically like, I'm sorry, man, don't know how to do that. So anyway, one question that was also interesting to me is, why is the comm system controlled by Tuvok at Tactical? Like, what? Isn't that more of an operations thing? I mean, I guess technically Lacar's is reconfigurable in really manifold ways, but like, why would you put that there?
Because they're just pressing buttons and the ship is running itself.
No! I refuse to believe your strange theory.
It's making more and more sense with each passing moment.
So did you guys ever see, there's this like video, there's a series of videos, it's really good on YouTube, it's called like Star Trek Bloopers. And it's 3 parts, and this guy put together like really clear, distinct errors. Like he puts a scene of Janeway saying we only have X number of photon torpedoes next to an actual visual sequence of how many times photon torpedoes were fired from Voyager after that. That far exceeds the numbers that she says. So anyway, one of the things that they note is during the siege of AR 5588 or 558 or whatever. It's a late 7th season DS9 episode set on a planet. There's a war. Federation's fighting the Jem'Hadar. And they're shooting like one basically burst of phaser fire at a time. And then, the guy puts another scene from a Next Gen episode where it was like, set your phasers to wide beam. And you realize, they could take out all of those bad guys with one wide beam shot. Why didn't they do that? I felt the same way about, the Voyager crew interacting with these drones. Like, all you need to do is like pull out your phaser and shoot really quick, and you can get all the drones in one shot. And then the story's over.
Perhaps it affects how the power is distributed. Like, do I want to shoot one Jem'Hadar dead, or do I want to tickle all 178 on their noses?
Could be.
Yeah, maybe it's not powerful enough.
Maybe they don't want to kill everyone at once. It's like this, there's this little conversation at the end about they come up with some virus or something they can release on the cube, and they're not going to do that. At that point, it's like there's your obligatory ethical conundrum that they're going to do the right thing on.
I was a little horrified. By how Janeway was acting. Like, it was really beautiful. Number one, you get a cute Borg baby. Very cute.
Yeah.
Number two, you get Janeway being maternal for a moment, which you never see on the show, and it's very delightful. Number three, she's like, I hope your bigger brothers and sisters don't force my hand. She gets really creepy. Yeah. Like genocidal almost. Well, I mean, I guess it's not genocide if you only kill like 5 people, but whatever. And so anyway, I was a little uncomfortable with that. I'm glad that she found another way. Like, it feels like that part of the episode was written by somebody else other than the part later where she's like, there's always another way. And she finds that other way. But, yeah, I think the fundamental failure of this episode, just to jump ahead a little, was not spending more time with the Borg kids and discovering how it is to be them, dealing with this mixture of adolescent impulses with however much Borg programming they have in their personalities. Like, that was interesting. And then you get shades of survival instinct inverted. You get this sense of like, in survival instinct, they took the premise of that and they distributed it among some not fully formed kid drones. These are people who don't have the Borg programming fully integrated yet, and there's nothing really for them to fall back upon, which leads them prey to this kind of authoritative power structure where this one guy with ego is like, I am the collective and I'm first and all of this. And, it's like, what if some Borg are separated from the collective and they happen to be kids? And then 7 of 9 walks up, and she's very different than she was in Survival Instinct, at least as she was as a drone in the flashbacks. She's trying to induce an experience of connection with individualism and past memories, that same one that she was trying to prevent in Survival Instinct, and then forcibly prevented by reassimilating them and creating new cortical nodes or whatever. And I thought that was masterful. I thought that was very well done and like smart and elegant and cool. And then, the clear distinction between being a member of the Federation and Starfleet and being a member of the Borg. Like, the distinction is, and we've been talking about this since we started with the Best of Both Worlds or whatever, the Borg don't give you an option for free expression. They're just like our way or the highway. Whereas 7 is saying, hey, when she's talking to Second, who later we know as Icheb, whereas the Borg would just kick Voyager while it's down and assimilate it if the Borg discovered Voyager damaged. 7 helps Second or Icheb to fix his vocal processor. It's like, you can live as you wish, if you wish, and we will support it to an extent. Even though you're Borg, we will support you in healing and maintaining your style of life. So I thought that was an interesting political point. But, how about you guys? More thoughts from you?
Yeah, I thought the sociology of what was going on in the cube was the most interesting part. And you see this sort of breakdown. It's one way in which a positive form of group coordination can break down into something pathological. So when you're in the Borg, there's no hierarchy. There's no one leader. It's just everyone acting as one. It's unity. When you're separated from that and the systems that enable that kind of coordination are broken, like the technological systems, then you're susceptible to one person leading in the name of that unity and in the name of that purpose, but without any of the substance of it. And that's why this kid's, I forget the dictatorial, insecure kid's name. I just called him number 1. I forget his name. But
you mean like P? Number 1, like PP?
No, that's not what I mean. Because took the title number 1 to himself. He's clearly this insecure leader, and
first.
he's
He
more
calls himself first.
He's more first, yeah. So he's more concerned with his own status than with actually accomplishing the goals that he claims to be leading the group towards, the Borg stuff, right? And so it's an interesting sort of study in the collapse of a culture.
It's like Donald Trump. He's clearly more interested in the exercise and the wielding of power than the wielding of it towards any meaningful end whatsoever. Which this comes after, not paying attention to Donald Trump as much as possible for like 8 months. Anyway, that's as much screen time as he's going to get on my podcast. An interesting subtlety that I noticed was, when does the Borg determine when a drone is irrelevant? Which is kind of the crux of what happens here. Like compare iBorg versus Survival Instinct versus Q-Who. In Q-Who, the drone is dead, but they remove the drone so that they remove parts from the drone. In iBorg, the Borg send a whole ship back for those 3 or 4 drones, including Hugh. In Survival Instinct, all 4 of them are like, hey, we're going to get saved, because we can trust that they care about us. And they do eventually. Now, it feels like maybe the Borg were considering that these Borg should be quarantined. They have some sort of a virus. Maybe they had some suspicion around that, or had identified that was what was going on. However, there's got to be some way of cleaning out a Borg cube. A Borg cube is a lot of resources to just throw away. But I guess, on second thought, they have done that before. In Unity, there's that Borg cube that's just hanging out by that planet. So anyway, I guess I've answered my own question through a zigzaggy series of comments and realizations.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some explanation. I'm satisfied there's some explanation for that.
No, Richard, half the fun is figuring out the explanation, not just hand-waving and saying, I'm sure there must be one. that would make so much of our podcast moot very quickly. Anyway. I liked how Kim, he actually gets hurt twice in this episode. Did you realize that? He gets assimilated and his face gets all mangled the second time. And after something blows up in his face.
I had something about Kim when you're done.
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead.
I think all these bad things happening to him would, build his character and result in some kind of change in his character over the years. Maybe he goes in, really
He's
naive.
He's got PTSD all the time, which is why.
And then, but by the 7th season, he should be just this monster who just doesn't care anymore because he's had these such horrible things happen to him. He's got such deep scars. He just looks out at the world and sees nothing of value. We don't really see that kind of character development.
Oh, what a dark turn. That would have been a great character for Garrett Wang.
That's Discovery. That's Discovery, not Voyager.
Yeah, that's for a different generation. I think it was weird that Harry is he seems creeped out by the Borg cube for obvious reasons, and Tuvok's like, hey, why are you so scared? He's like,
reminds me of a haunted house.
Haunted house when I was 6. I was like, no. It's
like, having flashbacks to when Species 8472 almost killed him. I mean,
have you forgotten so quickly? I'm like, is there no continuity? Is there the serialized nature of TV these days? It seemed like I don't know. It just seemed more procedural, and it didn't meld well with me. I thought, no, his character would have been a little more raw.
Seriously.
Would have been a little more close to the surface concerning recent events as opposed to something that happened to him 30 some odd years ago.
Well, when you think about Harry Kim, I can name offhand 5 things that have happened to him. 1, he got transported back to Earth in season 1 or season 2 in non sequitur, and he realizes he's got to go back to Voyager, so he blows up in a shuttle. Number 1. Number 2, there's an episode called The Disease, where he falls in love with this alien woman and is told not to get involved with her and has sex with her and catches the disease from her. And then number 3, this alien species has messed with him so that he thinks he's actually a member of that alien species and is drawn back to their planet so that they can mate with and basically. Do you guys ever see the movie Species?
No.
It was really great. It was advertised as the Sci-Fi Channel produced a bunch of sequels. Like the whole idea is there's this alien, except this alien looks like a really hot chick, and this really hot chick who you don't know is an alien really wants to bang you, and so she takes you home with her, and then she's actually using your body to reproduce, and you die this really horrific death. And there were a bunch of sequels. And it was really creepy because of course any guy could die from that. Any guy sees this woman and oh great, oh wait, you're ripping me out from the inside. So Harry Kim was kind of a victim of that same thing. This pretty much female species who didn't have males, brought males in from other alien species in order to reproduce. So that was kind of probably annoying and frustrating for him. And then
probably frustrating.
Mostly frustrating. More frustrating than anything else. And then Harry's kind of the butt of every joke. Tom Paris is this real ladies' man, and Harry's just stumped and trying to figure out women. He's kind of the equivalent of what Geordi was in Next Gen. And then 8472 happens to him. And then this happens to him. I mean, the guy doesn't get any good luck.
Well, at least he learned something.
Has he, though?
I mean,
that's the question.
I don't think he has. Anyway, so the next thing I have to say about that, or all of that, is I love when Kim actually reaches for his phaser and the Borg little girl says, "Your weapon won't work here." It was a creepy horror film moment. She really played that very well. I was just oh, you're small and young and innocent looking, and you just delivered a line that made me feel like you're a horrific blight upon all beings. And then there was some a lot of technobabble. I really thought it was dumb, this technobabble solution to them pulling the deflector off. That was just okay. And then cortical implants are depolarizing. We even have Borg-nobabble. I mean,
I almost feel like the virus stuff was ethics babble. Something you get in Voyager.
Yeah, they didn't really deal with that very well. They didn't confront it to the depth that it could have been.
We insert ethical quandary here.
We need something, and then they have a matrix of different quandaries they can just pick one from.
Guys.
Yeah.
Guys.
What?
I was reading online about this episode, many different sites, and I wondered, is the baby ever mentioned ever again on the series?
Yeah, seriously. They just forget about that baby.
What? What do they do with it?
That baby must have died behind the scenes. It must have just died. And it was too
all
sad.
Babies.
Maybe Neelix cooked it.
All babies,
Richard,
we take care
I don't
of them,
think they cooked
except for Borg babies.
I don't think Neelix cooked it. I think Neelix
what
could
else
have.
could have happened?
You're serving sorbet of Borg. Filet of Borg. That's terrible. No. I mean, you're right. He doesn't. The baby doesn't show up at the end of the episode. The baby was a real plot point. I felt kind of gypped that they brought that thing up and then didn't complete on it in this episode or any other. That's really disappointing. Maybe they just put it in a maturation. They don't have a maturation chamber. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have an explanation other than it died, and it was pretty weak. It was pretty sick. So dying is a real possibility there.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to see a baby dying on TV. It would be reasonable for them to skip televising that.
Yeah. Traumatizing the audience with a very cute little Borg baby. I was weeping when it was sick. I was literally weeping at this life being sick, and almost dying. So it would have been impactful if I had to see it die. It would have been sad. But Yeah, I think.
I wonder what
Go ahead.
kind of feedback. I wonder what kind of feedback in the writers' room would lead to that. They probably got sad thinking about the baby, already wrote scenes and shot them about the baby, and then decided we need to get rid of the baby because it's bumming everyone out, and didn't come up with a good way to explain it plot-wise, so they just stopped mentioning it. I don't know. Nitpicking. We'd have to ask the writers themselves, but I'm sure they don't remember.
It could be they just didn't think it through.
That's likely. But I want to have hope that they, you know what, that's probably it.
Yeah.
The thing that was, another interesting point in this, other than the sociology on the cube, was 7 of 9's comments about how the Borg discipline really, that's part of what enabled her to regain her humanity when she was talking to Janeway about that. And I thought that was really cool, this idea that the lack of control you have in the Borg, where you're part of this collective, actually gives you the strength, which you can flip around and give yourself strength as an individual. It's like the old, Nietzsche quote that I like about how those who wish to command must first learn how to obey. Because if you don't go through intense discipline, then you'll never be free. You'll just be a slave to your own whims.
Totally. There's also those memes where it's like a picture of a cat with that quote.
I haven't seen it. But I believe
like our cat overlords or something. There's a couple really great points, I thought, that could have been done better. Like this whole episode could have been done better with more of the Borg kid experiences, as we said. But 7 says, that order continues to be a source of strength for me, that order from the Borg, that sense of order that she has. And I could not have regained my humanity without it. When I heard her say that, what I thought of was Michael Burnham. I was like, this is an even better version of what they were trying to do with Michael Burnham. Like with Michael Burnham, you can kind of see it most of the time. It's pretty well done. Like they're trying to show a character who's inflected by a strict cultural tradition, but not overwhelmed by it. And so it takes all of this development for 7 to find her own voice and her own sense of herself. And Burnham too. Like Burnham's kind of overwritten by the cultural codes of being Vulcan, to the point where she doesn't express herself. And so it's really beautiful when she notices all these things that she values. She lists them off, a sense of cooperation and order and all of this, to the Borg drones. And then she says, you don't have to remain drones to experience those things. It's like a cultural conversion. She's like, these things that the Borg do that are really valuable, that we love, that are great, you can do here too, with more freedom. And she becomes this kind of apologist for being an individual, which is a very far cry from where she was in The Gift. She has certainly developed. And one of the sad things, one of the cool things, and then also the sad things, that is very well highlighted in Jammer's kind of little thing that I sent you this week, his list of like potential titles for Star Trek Voyager. Like it was like Star Trek : just how many shuttles ? Or Star Trek : 7 of 9. Also Star Trek : Jerry Ryan. Star Trek : Jerry Lynn Ryan. Star Trek : Ryan, Jerry Lynn. Because eventually when they brought 7 on board, they were like, she's the go-to. So we passed over a lot of that development. When we come back through Voyager, we will be able to notice that in more rich detail, because a lot of episodes are her engaging with developing her individuality. And there's kind of an echo of what it means to be Borg impressed upon her and expressed within her as she develops her individuality. And so there's this really cool sense of like, the Borg have a unique culture and unique value that you can then have in an individual in ways that are not ultimately disempowering or horrific. And one wonders if Picard had ever been introduced to 7 of 9, like what that conversation might have been like. Like, hey, you know that all these things that they gave you maybe weren't that bad after all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole cool thing about Voyager and the Borg is that they find the positive side of the Borg, which is basically totally absent elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what you've got to do in order to keep them interesting. So other notes, 7 looks much better in blue than purple or brown. Because, that's the most important thing on this show is 7 of 9's catsuit.
This is a point I stole from Jammer. He pointed out that, it was so hard for 7 to undergo de-assimilation, and she had to go on this huge journey, and then there are these kids, they get de-assimilated at the end of this episode, and they seem like they're, immediately fine.
Yeah, I mean...
I guess they were never really full Borg.
Yeah, that's my thought on this, is, they're not integrated enough into being Borg to where it's difficult for them to develop their own sense of individuality again. They've still got it. And you can see this with... what's his name, Icheb, he's recovering and reintegrating with his individuality pretty easily, pretty quickly. That my mother's hair was this color, So, yeah. It's all about how much resistance your personality puts up to integrating the new Borg aspects, and then how to dislodge or let go of those Borg aspects. That doesn't happen for them, really. So... Anyway, let's see. Jammer, who we always love, notes that they don't operate much like a collective. And I think it's that they do early on because it's more comfortable to do so. They fall into that pattern of roles, even though they're basically individuals from the first moment we see them. There's no groupthink communication. There's none of this hearing the voice of the collective in your head that we see in Dark Frontier in that very first scene where it's this one drone walking around. So, I mean, I think as they start to get more and more rattled by the situation and the circumstances, that's when their individual expression comes out more. But they're basically individuals to begin with, which makes the whole idea, I mean, yeah, maybe the theme of the episode, collective, in the title is more about, what does it mean to be in a collective? And back to 7 of 9's speech where she's like, hey, you can be in another kind of collective that's supportive of you and helpful. So
they should have called this episode Collective with a K to indicate that it's kids. I could have called it Collective Kids, with 2 Ks. That would have been cool.
Kidlective.
So, Richard?
Yeah?
No.
I think after this, since they've explored the idea of Borg kids, they should have an episode where they encounter a Borg cube, and the only drones that are left in there are Borg senior citizens. And they have to deal with problems of old age.
Yeah. What happens when a Borg gets old? Does a Borg get old?
We never see the old drones.
I think they're replaced.
Maybe they kill them at age 30 or something, and then but then we encounter a cube where there was a revolt or something of the old people, so they wouldn't get killed, and now it's run by old people.
Yeah, I really don't think that would
or
be
just
interesting.
Go younger. Just nothing but Borg babies.
Yeah, so on that note, final thoughts on there would never be a cube with just Borg babies.
I was waiting for that.
Took me a second to notice that. So
it would be,
anyway.
it would be good television.
How do we communicate with the babies? The Borg babies.
So, yeah, that's the thing. I just read through the summary for the next episode, and there's not enough in there for it to be interesting about the Borg.
So we're skipping the Unimatrix?
No, we're not skipping Unimatrix. I think we'll skip...
I meant skipping 2 Unimatrix.
Yeah, I think we'll skip 2 Unimatrix. Well, actually, you know what? Never mind. Let's do it and just see what happens, because I haven't seen it in a very long time. Maybe it's better than it looks.
We could do that episode and Unimatrix.
Let's do both. but Unimatrix is 2 parts, so that's 3
I'm okay
episodes
with that.
for next week. 3 episodes for next week.
I can do that.
You got a lot of free time. Okay, yeah, that works for me. So yeah, in conclusion, this episode was okay. I give it like a 7, maybe a 7.5.
I was going to go with 7.
Mostly because of what they tried to do. Like that gives it all the points that it's got, but the points that are missing, yeah,
it was really promising, but the execution just wasn't there in this one. And that's okay. You can't win them all.
Yeah. So that was it. All right, Tyler, we're waiting for your always the best and the most fun of the rating system.
They threw away a Borg baby. 4 out of 10. If they had just mentioned the Borg baby again, it would have been a 4.5 out of 10.
I would have given them a full 2 more points. I would have brought it all the way up to a 6. Only
if Neelix had cooked the baby.
No, Tyler.
I bet Neelix would be excited to find a Borg cube full of babies. You can just see him looking at his chop.
Lord of the Flies.
Ooh, new recipes. Yay. Experiments. Anyway.
On that note, you people are horrific. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
And it's been fun